And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the spaceship stream. You'll be watching from anywhere around the country or the world, and I really appreciate every single one of you. Coming to you from the spaceship studios from a galaxy far, far away. And this is a surprise live, and we have a couple of different things that we will be covering and talking about, including the continuous news and problems with the the Epstein situation with the administration so far. As I said, it has continued, along with other additional topics as well. And now what we'll be doing is going to the other window to see me. So, hello everybody. It's me, Alien Spaceship. I hope everybody's having a nice day, a a good time. So, this time we will not be doing the pirate game because it needs to be updated, and during these updates, I can't. It just would be best to have it done afterwards because it has a couple of updates to do, and it would just be too time consuming. All right, so basically, what's going on is it is the afternoon. There's some trials going on in some other places, but there hasn't really been any trials in general going on where we would be like monitoring them, watching them. So there's no trial news right now, and right. So basically, things that we're talking about is with Prince Andrew has been given the ability to travel around outside of the country of the United Kingdom recently. He's been given that. There has been so that is something with Prince Andrew that came out. Also, there is, which we'll be talking about throughout the stream. Other things that have been going on is there's been a divide politically over the situation at hand with the Epstein files, and then what occurred is that people in politics, they're trying to get a bill passed, which probably won't work, to get the files released. There seems to be a lot of distrust with. Hello, Greg. It's good to see you, buddy. Yes. Also, yeah, yeah. So, and also, basically, that has been a factor where some of the Democrats wanted to get something passed where they released the information. Then you had this other proposal that was coming up where they wanted to peer pressure them to have more of the files released, but then they're saying with Bondi that Trump believes she's doing her job well, and that's what he's saying. And as I said, there's a lot of distrust going on with the administration over the way they handled the files. Now, something else that occurred is that yeah, yeah, Greg. Yeah, also basically, yeah. So, oh, I'm glad you're getting ready to train. I hope you have a good time with that. It's always fun training. Yesterday I was doing some push-ups outside, and a bunch of ants bit my wrist. But it was all good. But yeah, that was something I didn't really expect to happen. But sometimes ant piles appear in the most unusual places. Right. That is what is going on with the Epstein situation, that it's continuously causing more of a rift. People have a lot of distrust. There is politicians on both sides that want the information to be released, and there's a lot of suspicion going on. They should have either not said there is all these files that don't exist. People think she could be compromised. There's a lot of different theories about that, and there's continuous updates and news coming out about that. Things that I also learned about is they are going to try to they are trying to seize the farmlands that the Communist Party has bought, because these companies have bought some farmland in the United States, and they're trying to take it back so they don't have access to it. There has been alleged confirmation that in Texas there were cloud seeding mechanisms being used, so that would explain why there was a mass flooding allegedly. So those are some other things that have come up. Yeah, shout out to also and basically and things like that. So going over here. All right. Now, as we have people come through, I am going to be reading some things as we have them come through. Let's see. Okay, so we have this right here, something interesting. Let's see. Regarding this matter. Here we go. This is about the China wind farms. Alright, so Trump repeats the false claims that China has only one wind farm. In the rambling set of remarks at an AI and energy investment summit at the Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh on Tuesday, Donald Trump veered widely off topic to praise the two partisan conservative reporters in attendance and made false claims about China having just one wind farm and about the uncle having once taught Ted K the Unabomber. Also, this is according to the news. This is all alleged. All right. So, after boasting that he made it easy for the American firms to burn coal and generate the electricity, Trump returned to debunked false claims that he made previously about China lacking wind farms. So China makes windmills, but how many wind farms do you see in China? I haven't seen any lately, Trump. It's sort of crazy that they build the windmills and sell them into our country. They sell them all over the world, and they ruin their fields and ruin their valleys. He then imagined a conversation with China, and then you took look at China. Where's your wind farm? Well, we have one, and we're thinking about one, Trump said. So allegedly sometimes the media will take things out of context and they will try to have a picture painted a certain way that fits their narrative, so then you have to go to the source to get everything verified to see if it's really what it says. Because he could say something, and sometimes things are taken out of context. This could happen in everyday life, either on purpose or not on purpose. It could happen for a variety of different reasons at hand. In fact, China is the world's largest manufacturer of the wind turbines, producing more than half of the supply, but is installing them at home and at a record pace. The Associated Press reported last week to debunk the false claims on the subject at a cabinet meeting. China has a 1.3 terawatts of utility-scale wind and solar capacity in the development, which could generate more electricity than the neighboring Japan consumed in all of the 2023, according to the report from the Global Energy Monitor released last week. The report highlighted China's offshore wind development, calling China the undisputed leader in offshore wind sector, though it also said coal and gas are still on the rise across China. And yeah, a lot of these things are on the rise in China because the way, in my opinion, the way their economy is, the way the global economy is, it is causing a lot of prices of stuff to go up in general everywhere. But especially in places like China as well. Like, we've seen a surge in silver and gold while the markets plunge or not do work at full capacity like they usually do because of the economic uncertainty that is going on with the tariffs. Although it's trying to give the Americans a fairer shot with workforce and jobs and stuff like that, it has caused a problem, obviously with the economy, but eventually I believe it will get better. But yeah, so everything everywhere I think is going low. Trump then moved on to praise the two journalists waiting to interview him after the event. The first was a New York Post reporter, Selena Zito, who has been published a book about the attempted assassination of Trump last year that took time to promote last week. Quote, "We have a great woman here, Selena Zito. She's the writer and she writes to the Rust Belt and the Midwest, really, but the Rust Belt is anything and having to do with about Rust Belt," Trump said. And also, Miss McAdams, the president added, referring to the Alexis McAdams of Fox, "Where is McAdams? We're going to do one with her, and she's great with Fox, and she's fantastic." Spotting the Fox correspondent in the crowd, Trump addressed her directly with the words of praise, stand up, young and smart and vibrant. You've done a great job, so I'll see you in a couple of minutes." President remarks also include the apparently a new false claim that he and late Uncle John Trump, who was accomplished in profession of engineering in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, taught Kay, the foreign university of mathematics professor who sent the series of letters and bombs. So that's what he is claiming. While Trump recounted the conversation with his uncle about what kind of student Kavinsky was, there appears that be no evidence that he had the murderous mathematician who educated at Harvard ever studied with Trump's uncle and physicist of MIT. And you see, we got this situation with, did they know him? Did they not know him? Did they know each other? Did they not know each other? I mean, I think they like to try to pin little things that he does to see if something is right or wrong or not. It's quite humorous how they do this quite often. They've done it, for years and years now. Trump veered into the subject of his uncle's scientific brilliance for the same reason that he usually does, to suggest that he has some sort of innate genetic predisposition to understand the science. All right. Okay. All right, so we have a couple different updates. Let's see what this one is right here. All right, it is now loading. It's loading. Okay, here, let's go. Right now. All right, so Bondi says there is no change to her position on the Epstein case after Trump suggests she could release more files if she wanted to. Attorney General Pam Bondi said Tuesday that last week's memo declining to release the files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein speaks for itself, rejecting the questions of making more documents public. Quote, "Today our memo speaks for itself, and we will get back to you about anything else," Bondi told reporters Tuesday, responding to the questions about President Trump's earlier comments that Bondi should release whatever she thinks is credible. All that does is prove that there's things they're not releasing. That's what that proves. At the White House on Tuesday, Trump said that he stood behind Bondi, responding to a question about his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, saying that there needs to be more transparency around the Epstein investigation. The Attorney General has handled that very well and really done a very good job. Attorney General has handled it very well and has done a very good job, Trump said. I would like to see also that the president added that apparent reference to the call for more transparency, but I think the Attorney General, the credibility is very important, and you want credible evidence for something like that, and I think the Attorney General's handled it very well. Additionally, Trump said that Bondi had not told him about his name appears in Epstein files, despite previous accusations from ex-Trump ally Elon Musk. No, she's given just a very quick briefing, Trump told reporters. Bondi's comments came during a press conference at the Drug Enforcement Agency highlighting law enforcement seizures of 64,000 pounds of methamphetamines, including those it's like meth, including those from pill form, and a drug bust since January. Several happened over July 4th holiday weekend. And that's good that they're doing that. Though the surge in drugs like meth and laced pills and a national threat, drug cases particular importance to the Attorney General, it was not enough to divert attention from the Epstein controversy. The department is keen to change the current conversation around Epstein sources. Tell CNN that it's prioritizing putting Bondi in front of the cameras to discuss other Trump priorities like the drug bust discussion Tuesday. Their hope. Okay. The department is keen to change current conversation around Epstein. Sources tell CNN that it's prioritizing putting Bondi in front of the cameras to discuss other than Trump priorities like the drug busts discussed Tuesday. Their hope is that the controversy will be deleted. Despite the enormous amount of backlash the department facing from Trump's own supporters, that the evident during the event Tuesday, as reporters repeatedly asked about additional disclosures, as well as her relationship with the FBI director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Bondi reportedly said that she would not answer questions on the matter. Bondi said that she, Patel, and Bongino are all committed to fight as a team to accomplish Trump administration's priorities, like reducing the violent crime, for instance. They say. Quote, I'm going to be here as long as the president wants me here, and I believe he's made it clear that the crystal clear for 4 years that Bondi said that the drama and subsequent calls for her resignation. Well, 3.5 now, right? She said Trump was also asked at the White House if he has faith in Bongino, who CNN has reported has clashed with Bondi over the release of the files related to Epstein investigation. Alright, and then he said he likes Bongino. Alright, so there is still a lot of heat from the different files that were being released, that were not released. So that is something that's continuously still going on over time with this. All right. Okay. Let's go over the farm situation with the China farms. China-U.S. farms. Alright, so this is the overview about it. While China does own some agricultural land in the U.S., it represents a small fraction of both total foreign and owned land and the overall U.S. farmland concerns exist, particularly regarding the national security, but the extent of the Chinese land ownership is often exaggerated, but I do believe that, in my opinion, it is quite prevalent. Here's a more detailed breakdown: the extent of the Chinese land ownership. Small percentage, the Chinese entities own a relatively small amount of U.S. agricultural lands, with the estimates generally below 1% of total owned land, and a tiny fraction of U.S. farmland, according to USDA at Cornell University. Centralized ownership. A significant portion of Chinese owned land is held by a few large entities, such as Smith and Field Foods, owned by Chinese companies and billionaire investors, according to NPR. Not direct government ownership. The Chinese government does not directly own U.S. farmland, but a lot of their companies are influenced by the Communist Party, because there's not like here where it's private. Everything's like indirectly, in my opinion, tied to the party. Concerns and regulations. National security concerns exist regarding the national security, particularly when farmland is located near the military bases or other crucial infrastructure. Increased scrutiny. Recent years have seen increased scrutiny in efforts to regulate or restrict the foreign land purchases, especially from countries like China. Proposed regulations. The Biden administration and some states have proposed rules to increase oversight and require approval for foreign purchases of land near sensitive locations. Important considerations. Reporting issues. There are concerns that the current reporting systems for foreign land ownership is not comprehensive or timely, making it difficult to track all transactions. Focus of food insecurity. While some raise concerns about food security, the U.S. generally is self-sufficient in food production and affordability and access to the main issues. Other than foreign investors, it is important to note that the other countries like Canada and the Netherlands hold significantly more U.S. farmland than China. There's some misinformation. Some discussions about Chinese land ownership are based off the inaccurate or exaggerated claims, according to the Cornell University. And this is like additional news about the situation with the farmland. Okay. I'm waiting for this thing to. Alright. Alright, here we go. USDA chief outlines federal plan to block China and other foreign ownership of U.S. farmland. The Trump administration announced a plan to ban Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland and claw back on land already owned. All right, so the Trump administration has announced a plan to ban Chinese ownership of the farmland and claw back on land already owned. The initiative called for the National Farmland Security Action Plan, aims to protect the U.S. food supply as the national security. I know, just somebody that was bringing in order, but it's all right. It'll be okay. The Trump administration announced a plan that to ban the Chinese ownership of the U.S. farmland and back land already owned. The initiative called for the national. The initiative called for the National Farm Security Action Plan aims to protect U.S. food supply as national security priority. Because you have these foreign people trying to control the farmland. It could cause a hypothetical problem if they have that. It could cause more harm than good, possibly. You want to have full control over your food and your supply. So I think this is a good thing at what they're doing. Several Republican governors voiced support for their plan, emphasized the perceived threat of the Chinese ownership. The plan also includes the measures to strengthen biosecurity and protect the agricultural supply chain and prevent foreign access to USDA funding. President Donald Trump administration will pursue a ban on Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland as part of an effort to strengthen the farm security, agriculture security, broke rules said on Tuesday, July 8. Appearing alongside the other cabinet officials, the Republican governor and members of Congress at an event outside the U.S. Department of Agriculture headquarters in Washington, D.C., Rollins announced a department initiative to block the foreign countries of concern from owning U.S. agriculture lands. Rollins said the officials will even try to revoke lands already owned by China-backed entities. The administration will take swift legislative and executive action to ban the purchase of the American farmland by Chinese nationals and foreign advisories, she said. The executive branch will also work for the state and local officials, do everything within their ability, including the presidential authorities, to claw back what has already been purchased by China and other foreign adversaries. Yeah, because I could see why it would be suspicious to have them go and buy land like that. Naturally would cause suspicion. Okay, go back there. Alright. Page kind of bounced a little bit. So, go back here. Alright, let's go back to the place that I was. To do everything within our ability, including the presidential authorities, to claw back on what... Okay, so Missouri law allows foreign ownership up to 1% of the farmland in the state. If foreign ownership was banned, it would force the sale and property in North Missouri, once known as premium standard farms of the property, past the China ownership with the 2013 purchase of this Smith & Field Foods by Sean Gui International, known as the WH Group. China's 40,000 acres near Princeton, northern Missouri. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that the nation's food supply was a national security issue on the par with energy and water supplies. Okay, hello Abby, great to see you. Hello, Abby. I'm glad to see you in chat. Welcome to the stream. I'm glad that we have you here. All right. So it looks like the it's clearing up again. So yeah, hello, Abby. I'm glad to have you here with us. As she said, "Hi guys, taking a break for being a hoe and joining it." All right. So the pirate game we usually play, I have to update it, and I want to do that after the stream. That's why I didn't do the update just right away with the game because I have to do the stream. So basically, there has been with the Chinese farmland something that I've talked about in the past is that the farmland, some farms have been bought by China. I know this from farmers that I've talked to that I know on YouTube. Another thing that has occurred is that they have seized a lot of the lands from China that were trying to buy the farmland, which I think would be positive because people have suspicions of national security if they try to take the food or try to take control of food in our country. So I think that was a positive thing, and there has been these theories about the cloud seeding in Texas that it's been confirmed that the cloud seeding has basically most likely caused the problems over there with their weather. All right. Okay, Abby, thank you. It should be better now. Right. So, basically, like right now, it right now it looks like it has improved, but it could be, buffering a little bit. But thank you for that information. Okay. Now I'm going to get more detail about this. The Chinese farms that have been seized. Okay. We'll read it through here instead, so it won't cause any kind of problems. Seized in the U.S. Yes, okay. Thank you, Abby. All right, so with regarding the Epstein situation, they are still receiving heat over the Epstein files not being released, and something that Trump was saying that he said that Bondi can release more information if she wants to, but all that is proving is that there's more information they're not releasing, and she thinks she's released enough for now. So that's interesting how it just there's other information they must not be releasing, and Bogino of the FBI went back to work, but he's been kind of protesting about it. So yeah, there's a bunch of new information about the Epstein thing that keeps coming out constantly. It's like another ending cycle of information is coming out. But also something that's a little bit something also interesting that I was like mentioning to you a moment ago was that about the farms that the China has bought through different companies that they have been seized, and I think that is a cool thing because we don't necessarily want them controlling our food supply because that could not possibly might be a bad thing. And so basically to summarize like what that's about is that Missouri it was basically in Missouri, and they threatened to seize the Chinese-owned farmland after the 24 billion judgment. On March 7, the Attorney General Andrew Bailey announced that his state had won the 24 billion judgment in federal court against China for unleashing the COVID-19 pandemic and hoarding the personal protective equipment. John Stephen of the U.S. Court of the Eastern District of Missouri imposed the judgment against China and its government of the Communist Party and local governments in China that were health agency and laboratory in the country. The lawsuit originally filed for Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt in 2020. The judgment is 6 times more likely than previous largest judgment in Missouri's history. Landmark is a victory for Missouri and the United States to fight the hold on accountability, unleashing that. And the Chinese ownership of is hot button issue in Missouri during the state's 23 legislative section. The House Minority Leader and the Democratic candidate Crystal Quad introduced the legislation that would be a foreign ownership of the land in Missouri to modify the version of the bill that made it the Senate to gain the Republican support, but it was voted before the session ended. According to the list maintained in Missouri, the Department of Agriculture of 118,000 acres of Missouri farmland are owned by foreign-based enterprises, for a total of 0.43% and 27.5 million acres in the state. The Chinese are the single foreign owner of the farmland in Canada in a distant second place, but 99% of the Chinese-owned land belongs to the owner, Smith & Field Foods. Largest pork producer in the U.S., which originally was based in Virginia but bought by Hong Kong-based and WH Group for $4.7 billion in 2013. Now, that is, that is something that we have been talking about in the channel. So basically, to explain how it works with the farmland is that when you have a farmer, they are usually operated by a bigger company like Cooks and different ones like that, where you get your food, you get people that eat meat or they're vegetarian, whatever it is, they get their food and meat and vegetables and stuff from the farmers that are owned by bigger companies. And sometimes these bigger companies get bought out by foreign countries. And I've heard conspiracies that they have been trying to send better meat and stuff to China and not the best things to the United States, or they could try to take over the food supply. So I think it's a positive thing, in spite of I feel the failure in the Epstein situation, that they're able to seize the Chinese companies' ability to try to control the farmland. Maybe they were not being nefarious, but they're not really trustworthy about what they're trying to do with those farms, in my opinion. Now, I think it is important because if you control the food, you control the people. And I think it's good for people to have control over their own food. Another situation is that, see if there's a specific article I could recite, but they're saying that the cloud seeding caused the flood. Now, they're saying it's a conspiracy theory, but it seems that there are some experts allegedly that are saying that there is cloud seeding. As I said, this is an alleged conspiracy theory, but there has been alleged confirmation by some experts that I can't recite to you right now who exactly they are, because this is kind of like hearsay, but cloud seeding may have been responsible for the severe rain that was seen, allegedly. Now, this is something else that we'll look into and just kind of talk about what the cloud... This is kind of like a mainstream narrative about it, but just kind of a background about the conspiracy, though, for those that are here. All right, let's see if this loads accurately. It might buffer a little bit, possibly. I'll have to wait and see. All right, so it says, did cloud seeding cause the Texas floods? Misinformation spreads as severe flooding strikes the U.S. Scared. All right. Severe flooding has swept across multiple parts of the U.S. in recent weeks, from Texas, where more than 100 people were deleted during the flash floods. Also flooded last year in North Carolina, which reports multiple fatalities. And tropical storms, dumped heavy rains in the state. As devastation spreads, so have baseless claims. Thousands of social media users have shared the conspiracy theories blaming the floods on the seeding, a weather modification practice the experts say is not unrelated to recent storms but is rarely used in emergencies, especially in the humid storm prone south. Now, as I said, a lot of storms will happen anyway, and sometimes you'll have storms that will happen every 100 years, but it's possible that cloud seeding could have had something to do with it. Even a congressional candidate has alleged that humans manipulated the weather behind the 4th of July weekend floods in Texas, which have left these 120 people deleted and more than 170 still missing. Candace Taylor, who is running the Georgia district of one of the U.S. House Rep, posts on X on Saturday. I'll show you all what I'm looking at. Sometimes y'all like to also see what I'm reading. Here we go. And Candace Taylor, who is running for Georgia's District 1 of the U.S. House, posted on X early on Saturday that just one day after the flooding in the Texas Hill Country swept away 27 girls from the Riverside Camp Mystic, and as rising waters in Austin are deleted, at least 16 more with 12 missing. Fake weather and fake hurricanes and fake flooding and fake. In posts, she wrote that this isn't just a climate change, it's cloud seeding, a geoengineering manipulation, she added. The fake weather is caused by a real tragedy that's murder, pray, prepare, question, and narrative. I think it's always good to question a narrative. I think that's always a positive thing to do because sometimes information isn't really trustworthy. But experts say that cloud seeding is not to blame. For the record, the recent floods across the United States. Instead, the widespread flooding was driven by the convergence of moisture from the two tropical systems lingering in the atmosphere. Just days earlier, the tropical storm Barry made landfall on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, where another system stalled over the Gulf, pumping deep in the tropical moisture in the southern U.S. Moisture fueled catastrophic floods in Texas Hill Country, where the Guadalupe River surged 30 feet in less than an hour early Friday. And this kind of explains what is cloud seeding exactly. Cloud seeding is a form of weather modification that first developed in 1940s to help boost rainfall or snowfall in drought-prone arid regions. The process involves injecting a small amount of chemical, typically silver iodide, into an existing cloud to encourage the formation of large water droplets or ice crystals, according to ABC 13 meteorologist Travis Herzog. Most clouds don't naturally produce rain or snow because the droplets or crystals inside of them are too small to fall, but silver iodide acts as a large cloud condensation nucleus, helping water vapor clump together into the heavier droplets or crystals that gravity can pull down to the ground, Herzog explained in a Facebook post. It is not allowed on storms that could produce severe weather, tornadoes, or flash floods, Herzog wrote. Is cloud seeding regulated? There are both federal regulations and state regulations for cloud seeding and other forms of weather modification. Are there currently any cloud seeding projects in Texas? A cloud seeding project took place in Pleasanton, about 150 miles southeast of Keir County on July 2. According to reports from the Rainmaker on the weather modification companies, the U.S., but experts emphasizes that the cloud seeding did not trigger severe weather and sought to bring modest rainfall to the area, which has experienced persistent drought conditions for several years. Once cloud seeding, it releases its moisture quickly and does not continue producing rain beyond that the initial bursts, according to the meteorologists. I see someone says that RFK Jr. says no cuts on the Medicaid and Big Beautiful Law. Okay. So it seems like there's some misinformation about that going on then. All right, there has been several rounds of rainmaking efforts in South Texas since March, according to data from Rainmaker. Quote, even though cloud seeding was not responsible for the hill country floods, I know that there are moral and ethical concerns when it comes to modifying the weather or any natural earth system. However small those modifications may be, Herzog wrote, adding that in the topic is worth more public discourse and scrutiny. Yeah, so that is explaining about the possible theory of the cloud seeding that Liberty and Miranda were bringing up to us. That a lot of the mainstream media is condemning it as conspiracy theories, but it seems like there possibly, in my opinion, seems to be some truth to it. So it's likely either it was done on purpose or intentional, but they did the cloud seeding. I want to see what this thing looks like, a cloud seed. Basically, okay, go to Google over here. And then it goes to right there. And then see cloud seeding. Okay, now switching over to the other window right here. Kind of switch playing musical chairs with the windows. Alright. Alright, here is the cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is a weather modification technique used to enhance the perceived existing clouds. It involves introducing any tiny particles, like silver iodide, into clouds that encourage the formation of ice crystals or water droplets, potentially leading to increased rainfall or snowfall. This technology does not create clouds but can increase participation from clouds that are already capable of producing it. Cloud seeding introduces particles like silver iodide or salt into the clouds, acting as the nuclei for water molecules to condense or freeze around. This process can help a form of large raindrops or snowflakes, potentially leading to precipitation reaching the ground. Scared. Cloud seeding is typically used in regions experiencing drought or water shortages or suppress hail. What it can and cannot do. Cloud seeding can enhance the precipitation in suitable clouds by 5 to 15%. They allege it cannot create clouds Hey Todd, it's great to see you, buddy. Welcome to the stream. We are talking about a variety of different things, including allegedly in Texas, there are conspiracies that some have confirmed that the cloud seeding was a reason for the what happened with the flooding in Texas, allegedly. And I'm going over like what cloud seeding is. Also, what I'm doing is we're talking about new things that come out with the Epstein thing. Nothing like new or major, but just that the fighting continues about releasing the files or not, and there's all this different political proxies going on, and how there's farmland that China owns, and they've passed something recently, which is a positive thing. So I've condemned them for not releasing the information on Epstein. Now I understand if there's some investigations going on further with him, they may not be releasing the information because of that. I don't know, but there are releasing. I do condemn them for the Epstein thing not working out the way it worked out. But also, what they have done good is that there's farmland that China owns through certain companies that are now being seized from China, the Chinese companies. So we return back to America because you don't want necessarily a Chinese company owning a food company in America because hypothetically it could be used as a way to control us. We don't know if their intentions are nefarious or not, but we don't exactly trust them. And it's like you control the food, you control the people. I mean, and you have maybe allegedly farmers have told me that their poultry has been and different things and different meats and stuff. I guess vegetables and things have been sent to China that were good, and maybe us they may not send us the best thing. So that is something that is good that they did. I'm glad that they were trying to take it back from the Communist Party that may be influencing companies in their country to take our farmland. That's something good they're doing. I appreciate them for doing that. Now the Epstein thing, I of course I'm not God. I don't know everything about why it is what it is, but I'm not satisfied with that way they've handled that situation. Todd says the cloud seeding may be a contributing factor. The tropics hurricane season may be kicking up very soon. There's disturbances that will likely affect New Orleans in a few days. Thank you, Todd, for the heads up. I'm glad to know. It is not a solution for extreme weather events like floods. Safety regulation. And yeah, Todd, I totally agree with you. You know, and we are getting closer to that season. Safety and regulation. Silver iodide, the most common seeding agent and generally considered safe in the small quantities used according to research from the Maine state legislature. Cloud seeding operations are usually regulated and require permits with some areas having specific regulations. Research is ongoing to assess the potential environmental and health impacts for more widespread cloud seeding. All right. Oh, I'll do that. I'll do that right now. All right, let's go here. Ah, okay. Gulf tropical development chances are increasing. National Hurricane Center. Okay, so there's something tropical. We see that right there. Okay. I'm going to their website though, like Todd requested. All right, so you have uh, a broad spectrum of an area is 7 day geographical tropical weather outlook. It looks like from New Orleans to Florida and the spectrum that we could be facing some sort of tropical disturbances. Scared. And a tropical storm, it's something that comes from Africa and it heads into the United States. Gulf tropical development chances are increasing, National Hurricane Center says. National Hurricane Center is watching a cluster of thunderstorms off the coast of Florida for possible tropical development later this week. Chances for development are increasing as the system is becoming better defined. The areas of low pressure is crossing the Florida peninsula and north of Orlando. The NHIC is calling to invest 931, term used to identify systems that could develop, allowing more sophisticated, high resolution computer models to be run on them. And Todd said models going through New Orleans and going through Mississippi. Okay, thank you, Todd. As this low travels westward, it enters extremely warm water of the Gulf and midweek. There will be a small window of opportunity to develop into a tropical depression or tropical storm. All right, so you see right here, you have high, and there's one thing going to Florida, and you have this one other disturbance heading towards New Orleans and Mississippi. So that is something that is true, right there. There's two of them. Flooding will be a number one concern from the system in Florida. A flood watch is in effect for much of central Florida through Tuesday evening. The timing. The most concentrated rainfall will push across the Florida peninsula before entering in the northeastern Gulf on Wednesday. The system will bring a wet wake after it leaves Florida's peninsula. Expect numerous showers and thunderstorms across the state the next few days. This will be an uptick in showers and storms compared to the normal summertime pattern of pop-up afternoon storms. This elevated storm chance should relax by Friday on Florida's peninsula. By the mid to late week, rain chances will increase from the panhandle to enter the entire Gulf. All right, this system will bring a wet wake after it leaves Florida peninsula, expected to numerous showers and thunderstorms across the state the next few days. This will be an uptick from showers and storms compared to the normal summertime pattern of pop-up afternoon storm events. The elevated storm chances should relax by on Friday's Florida peninsula. By the late midweek, rain chances increase for the panhandle and the entire Gulf Coast as the low continues to move toward the west northwest, as it'll increase stability, which will bump the rain chances up. So you see Houston to Miami, New Orleans, Panama City, Jacksonville, all across the Gulf Coast, you're going to have this problem. Locally, heavy downpours could lead to flash flooding in some spots near the Gulf Coast later in the week. Some remnants of moisture in the spin could keep the locally heavy rain threat in the lower Mississippi Valley into the weekend. The National Weather Service is urging residents and visitors anywhere from Florida to Texas to stay up to date with the forecast and follow any guidance issued in regard to any tropical development. Yeah, so that is the. I show the graphs, like what Todd said, that it will be affecting New Orleans too, and Mississippi, and I also add the entire Gulf Coast as well. And I'm glad to have a heads up about that because I know now that there's going to be something heading my way. Something heading. Scared. Scared. Alright. We have this window open. Let's see what that is. The heel. Yeah, and a lot of these different systems will go, I said, from Africa. And let's see explaining about the dust from Africa. Todd says there is a website you need to bookmark. It's called A Tropical Tidbits. I'd advise you to look at it on your own and get familiar with before taking it to your stream. It's an excellent website. Okay, Todd, I will do that. Okay, I will look into that. Okay. And now what we'll be doing is explaining about how these hurricanes are affecting the country, how it all works. Just in layman's terms to just review for everybody. Okay. While the Saharan dust itself doesn't create hurricanes, it significantly influences their development and intensity. The dust carried by the Saharan air layer can suppress tropical cyclone formation by inducing dry, stable air that disrupts storm developments. However, at the lower concentrations, the dust can also enhance rainfall from hurricanes that do form. Here's a more detailed explanation. The SAL, a mass dry dust air originating from the Sahara Desert, travels westward over the Atlantic Ocean. This layer of dry air distributes the development of tropical cyclones by suppressing the formation of the thunderstorms that fuel hurricanes. The dry air reduces moisture, and the strong wind can disrupt the storm organization. Dust as a shield. The dust particles can also reflect sunlight, leading to the cooler ocean and temperatures in the main development region. The Atlantic cooler sea surface temperatures mean less energy is available for hurricanes to form and intensify. Dust and rainfall. While the SAL generally inhibits the hurricane development, a study in the scientific advances found that a lower dust concentration, the dust can actually enhance rainfall. From hurricanes, the dust can act as a condensation nuclei promoting the rainfall. In African origins of hurricanes, it's important to note that the significant portion of the Atlantic hurricanes, particularly major ones, originate as disturbances as far off as the coast of Africa that move westward. These disturbances can be strengthened favorable conditions like warm ocean temperatures and unstable atmospheric conditions. Thank you, Todd, for the website. I have it saved. Thank you. I have that saved. Okay. In essence, the Saharan dust plays a complex role in the hurricane season with the potential suppress of storms or in some cases the entrance of rainfall from those that do form. Right, so that is how the hurricane dust and all how it all forms. Okay. Something interesting I found out the other day. This is just like a fun fact thing about to share with all of you is about this clock that Jeff Bezos created. Something is kind of like a fun fact because it's quite insane. All right, so Jeff Bezos is funding the construction of a monumental 10,000 year clock designed to be a symbol of a long term thinking and physical re- representation of humanity's future. The clock is being built inside a mountain in West Texas, with Bezos providing 42 million in funding for the project. It is a mechanical clock designed to tick once a year, with a century hand advancing every 100 years, and the cuckoo emerging every 1,000 years. So it's supposed to last for 10,000 years. It ticks once a year, and every 1,000 years, the cuckoo comes out. And he was trying to do it as a way of long term thinking. A lot of people would have different thoughts about this, but yeah, it was about long term thinking. Like 10,000 years from now, the people that are here, or 1,000 years of people that are here, 100 years of people that are here. So that was the symbolicness about it. And it has no man or anybody doing anything with it for 10,000 years. So the cuckoo will come out, say if it was built this year, it would come out at 3025 is when the cuckoo would come out. It's quite wild to think about. And it's in a remote location in West Texas, so you're going to have to go all the way to this remote region and do a pilgrimage and a hike. This 2,000-mile hike, kilometer hike, to this remote location where this cuckoo bird is. I mean, where the clock is. Where the cuckoo bird in it. And the purpose. The clock is not just about telling time. It's a symbol meant to encourage people to think beyond short-term gains and consider the long-term consequences of their actions. Construction. The clock is being built deep inside a mountain with a 500-foot-tall shaft housing the mechanisms. Design. The clock is entirely mechanical, relying on physical processes rather than a digital technology. Materials. The clock components are made from the durable materials like the marine-grade stainless steel and high-tech ceramics to ensure its longevity. Timekeeping. The clock will be synchronized with the sun and the moon, and its chime generator can produce millions of unique bell sequences. Visitors. The clock is designed to be a pilgrimage site, require a hike to reach the interior gears. Bezos' company of Bezo Expeditions is providing the 42 million for the project. The inspiration. A clock is inspired by the work of computer scientist Danny Hillis, who conceived the idea in 1989. So that was something wild I learned yesterday. quite interesting. And then you had like the location, like it's this rural area in the mountain. Yeah, so this is the mountain where it's located. I'm scared. All right. So that was an interesting thing that I discovered last night, actually. All right. And going over to this other window. All right, this is more drama with the Epstein situation that I've been covering. The saga continues. Right here. See how this goes. It could buffer a little bit. All right, so basically, that Trump says that Bondi should release whatever she thinks is credible on the Epstein case. About the Ukraine war. Let's see, is it going to work? Okay, it's working. Ukraine war. The president denied that he was considering sending long-range missiles to Ukraine, telling reporters that he does not think his Ukraine counterpart Zelensky should attack Moscow. Trump announced yesterday that the U.S. would send Parrot missiles to Ukraine, though, through NATO. Patriot missiles. All right. Epstein files. Trump again defending Attorney General Bondi, who has faced heat for her handling of the files related to Jeff Epstein. He also said that whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. So when they say that whatever she thinks is credible should be released, it seems that there must be some other things they haven't released. You know, that they said there's no information, then they're saying that if it's worthwhile to release it. So yeah, it's just adding more mystery to the situation. In Arizona, the Democrats are holding a primary for the special election for the Arizona 7th Congressional District to fill the seat for Rep. Raul Grivjavla, who passed away in March. All right, let's see some updates. All right, let's see. Right here. Something I was saying a little bit earlier before, kind of the beginning of the stream, is that Trump was claiming that his uncle taught the Unabomber at MIT, where Ted, I can't say his name, Kak Zinski was not a student. So there's something else that in the media that he was saying his uncle taught the guy when he didn't, or he did. It's kind of up for debate. Okay. So we got that going on. Okay. And some more things on the matter. Also, there's going to be some tariffs that are going to be put on Russia, allegedly. And this is something new about the Epstein feud that is going on. We're going to, about the politically, what the politics is doing with it. The House Democrats trying to corner the Republicans on the Jeffrey Epstein situation, so it may be used as a political ploy. The congressional Democrats want to shine a spotlight on the Epstein controversy and drive a wedge into the Republican Party, now tearing itself apart over the issue, but relegated the minority in both chambers that they're dealing with limited toolbox to put the GOP members on the spot. Now, both sides in the political spectrum are both saying that they want the Epstein files to be released. And the Democrats are saying it and the Republicans are saying it. It seems like both sides are talking about it. And, well, something else that happened is that Prince Andrew has been permitted to leave the United Kingdom, the disgraced prince. He's able to leave the United Kingdom if he wants to go abroad. That's something new that happened. But of course, anywhere he goes, he's going to be hated. That's something else that I found out last night, like earlier this morning, technically. Democrats attempt to weaponize the swirling questions over Epstein and have been summoned by the House majority moves to hamstring the minority party. One option provided for the undercut chamber's rules that the privileged resolution of inquiry was quashed by the House GOP leaders on April amid the scandal over the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of the unclassified signal, the chat. This means that the Speaker Johnson can simply bottle up other attempts to exploit the GOP divides over the convicted six offender whose 2019 deletion by self-deletion in prison has fueled the scandals of the conspiracy theories. Mark Vesey, the Democrat from Texas, for instance, introduced a non-binding resolution on Monday. Hello there, Greg. Theories that Mark Vesey, for instance, introduced a non-binding resolution Monday to demand the Trump administration release all its files related to Epstein, but not the legislation is unlikely to ever get a vote in the House floor. Rep. Kahana D of California had slightly bit more success mounting an effort to amend the cryptocurrency-related legislation scheduled to hit the House floor later this week to compel the release of the files. The Dem Forces Rules Committee vote on whether to allow the floor to vote for the amendment. Republicans voted it down, though the rules of the members of the ranks of Ralph Norman in South Carolina crossed party lines. On Tuesday afternoon, the House Democrats attempted to cast prejudicial votes in the reform to release the so-called Epstein files. Had their effort to vote down the motion succeeded, they also said they would have moved forward with Kahana's amendment, but the previous questions vote, which has been won by the House minority since 1988, prevailed in the 211 to 210 party lines. Alright, so this is something that's new about it. Rep. Thomas Mazie announced Tuesday he'd kickstart the long shot procedural maneuver to force a vote on the releasing of Jeff Epstein related files. The Kentucky Republican, along with Rep. The California representative, also Roe, is launching the so-called discharge pension to bypass the leadership and allow a floor vote on the release of the materials provided. The pension to go to the 218 lawmaker signature. We deserve to know the implications of how deep the corruption is and the promised justice and transparency. The discharge pension is the majority party members. Let's see if that works. We all deserve to know what's in the files and who's implicated and how deep the corruption goes, Macy wrote on X. Americans are promised the justice and transparency. The discharge pension gambit is rarely successful with many minority party members hesitate to buck their own leaders' heads, even if they support the underlying premise, which I totally disagree. If they agree about something, they should go and release information. But the Republicans have been roiled by division over Trump's administration's handling of the investigation in the Epstein, the disgraced financier who was leaded in prison after being charged with the sex trafficking. Some Republicans, like Macy, have called for more disclosure from the administration after the Justice Department said there was no evidence of the client list, and despite the suggestions from the president and the allies during the 2024 campaign, they believed such information was being hidden from the public. The Democrats, in turn, have needled the GOP over time of the controversy and attempted to turn a procedural vote Tuesday into referendum on releasing more of the files. All right. So what's going on is this big war is still happening. So you have different politicians in Congress that are trying to get the information released. On both sides, there's political wars. There's, for instance, Bogino has come back after threatening to resign. And many of the politicians are calling for all the files to be released. So right now, there's nothing new that's been released. But the war continues, and social media and everybody continues to be not happy about the results here. That is the newest update about that situation. Yesterday, we talked about it and reviewed the different information about this case. And then now, just as an update about it, more is continuing, but we may never know the truth about it. Let's see about the Prince Andrew thing, which we talked about him yesterday. There's like an update about it. Let's see. Yes, so Prince Andrew is free to travel again, but remains an embarrassment to the royal family, experts say. He was the one that assaulted Virginia and many other girls allegedly. So he has been allowed to leave the country if he wants to, but he's still an embarrassment, and I'm sure that people certainly would attack him. Yeah, so he could travel. And it's interesting that this came out right after this other situation occurred, where the drama with the files. So doing a fair analysis of covering the different topics at hand with the situation at hand with the files and also the other stuff that has been occurring. All right. So reading a little bit about this to give some context about it, and then we'll go into the next part of the stream. All right. All right, let's see if this loads properly. Right. Prince Andrew's free to travel, but again remains an embarrassment to the royal family, experts say. All right. Prince Andrew can now reportedly end his self-imposed travel ban following his controversial ties to Jeffrey Epstein, and while discussed, the Duke York can travel freely without fear of repercussions. Royal experts insist that, to Fox News Digital, that the heir Miles Andy is no longer there. Right. Prince Andrew remains an embarrassment to the royal family. Royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams told Fox News Digital, "No one has forgotten his infamous News Insight interview of the photograph with Epstein, and he continues to be seen on the entitled umbilical." All right. So he can only be seen with the royal family inside a church without attracting fiercely negative comments, Fitzwilliams said, but unless he accepts that he has been found guilty in the court of public opinion and some repentance, at the very least, something positive which helps others, best fits his future as well as him behind. Fox News Digital obtained the page of the International Department of Justice that says the Epstein, a late American financier and convicted pedophile, was deleted by suicide. There is no list of clients were involved in the explosion and in the exploitation. Quote, the systematic review revealed that the incriminating client list, a portion of the memo read, there was also no credible evidence found in the blackmail of his actions. We do not uncover the evidence and could predicate the investigation against the uncharged parties. All right. The memo also stated that Epstein deleted by suicide in 2019 Metropolitan Correctional Facility in New York City. A source claimed to The Sun that the son of Queen Elizabeth II has been abroad only once since his controversial connections to Epstein came to light. He has been very nervous about going aboard and felt that he always been looking over his shoulder, as he could be subject to civil action or worst, being arrested, the source claimed in the outlet. Hopefully with this out of the way, it means he can at least leave the country. Insider continued, shout to Mary Toodles. What he's supposed to do with the rest of his life, and he has been convicted of any crimes and can't sit along doing nothing the Royal Lodge forever, so spokesperson said. Well, Andrew might be feeling a sense of relief. His cautious optimism may be now technically able to travel. Both his personal and public prospects remain constrained by the enduring negative fallout, as well as his frightfully tarnished reputation from Epstein's scandal, she explained. The media will still be relentless and most certainly not positive. They will also be more likely to be hostile, as well as embarrassing to the royal family. He does not travel to the U.S. If he does travel to the U.S., he is not likely to ever regain public favor nor return any prominence.
Facts.
Right. Quote, he just lost his royal patronage and military roles, forward which continues. What? There is no indication whatsoever that King Charles III or any senior royal ever intends to rehabilitate his public image nor restore his former status in any way. Senior royals are far more concerned with the protecting of the institution and reputation than anything Andrew does is seen as a liability. Prince William remains adamant regarding severe the severely restricting to any option participation at all, so he might travel, but not in any formal capacity. Fitz, Fitzwilliams also questioned whether to appoint him, referring to any contribution Andrew can make as a royal. He isn't doing anything useful, although the job could be found helping run a royal estate. He said he may well cling to his 30-room royal lodge if he can afford to the upkeep. A 75 lease that was he took out in 2003. It's noted that he did not offer help with the FBI investigation, although he had originally offered to do so. The Fitzwilliams quote: "It should also be stressed that he has not been found guilty of anything, that has always maintained his innocence." King Charles' younger brother stepped back as a senior royal in 2019 following the nuclear televised interview with the BBC news site. In time, the royal said regretted his relationship with the 66-year-old. He was stripped her second son of his military titles and partonages. At the time, the father of the two attempted to have. Abby says BBC, huh? Yeah. Right. In interviews from the BBC news site, at the time the royal said he regretted his relationship with the 66-year-old. Yeah, the BBC. And to give context about that, it was basically the King Charles' younger brother stepped back as a senior royal in 2019 following his nuclear televised interview with the BBC News Night about his ties to Epstein. At the time, the royal said he regretted his relationship with the 66-year-old. But yeah. And it's unfortunate that people like this need to face consequences, legal consequences for their actions. I don't like how these people just can get away with it scot-free without being tried or anything. And I think more need to be done than taking away the royal ties. And if he comes to the country, there's not going to be a warm welcome to him if he's able to travel abroad, because he is extremely unwelcomed and unwanted, and for what he did. And anybody else, even those that we don't know about that were involved in this of creepy activities that happened. Scared. In January 2022, Queen, who passed away in September of that year, stripped her second son of his military titles and patron ages. At the time, the father of the two attempted to have the sexual assault lawsuit made by Virginia Giuffre dismissed. Like we were talking about Virginia yesterday. And Andrew settled with Virginia for an undisclosed sum of agreeing to make a substantial donation to her survivors organization. Yeah, he thinks he could buy his way out of this situation. This came like this morning. Earlier, it was like still dark because I'm up all night, pretty much, literally. And this is something that I found out. Like, it was after the stream from yesterday. They give him this travel. He's able to travel anywhere. But yeah, if he was just some regular Joe Schmo, he wouldn't have been able to. He'd probably be locked up. Like, so as I said, this is sowing the distrust between the two groups: the elite, the establishment, the alleged establishment, and the regular people. Because, as I said, I was fair, and I talked, because people are saying that the Epstein thing's a distraction. But hey, I talked about all the things other things going on with the Ukraine or the thing in Russia, which is basically the same thing, with the farm stuff that he did with the taking away communist China's influence over the farmland, which is, I think it's good he's doing that. It needs to be respected. But this is just embarrassing for the country about the situation. And it's very creepy that Virginia was deleted by somebody, in my opinion, and not deleting herself. It's like some cliche movie about the mob, like we were talking about yesterday, where you have these assassins all over the place taking out people because Virginia was a victim and she was taken out. And the thing with Epstein was he was going to spill the beans about he was going to expose everybody, and he was talking about all these different people. He was talking about his friendship with Trump. Not that he didn't say Trump did anything illegal, but he was talking about all these different people, and then they just went and took him out. It's just we know what's going on. We're not stupid. So now they let him go travel anywhere he wants now. It's like basically to explain the disgust that we have with these people is like say you have a piece of like a cake or food that was very nice and it goes bad. That's what these people give off. Like food that was like good or decent, then it went bad. So no matter what this guy does or any of these other people do, they just had that. They kind of went spoiled. They went bad, like it expired. A statement filed in court said that the prince acknowledged that Epstein was a sex trafficker and Virginia is an established victim of the abuse. And as I said, with Trump was telling Bondi that she could release any information she wants, and she feels she's released enough information, but that just means that there's more information not releasing. Yeah, but hopefully they release it. But if there's some kind of case going on that they need to do more research on, or it's under investigation, that could be a reason why they're not releasing it. But we have to wait and see. Virginia said that Epstein trafficked her and that had sex with Andrew 3 times in London during her 2001 trip at Epstein's New York mansion when she was 17 and in the Virgin Islands when she was 18. She took her life, but I disagree with that. In April this year on a farm in Western Australia, her publicist confirmed she was 41. And she kept on claiming that she did know about them trying to take her out. It is believed that Andrew first met Epstein in 1999. Andrew claimed that he cut ties with Epstein shortly after the pair were photographed taking a stroll through Central Park. Alright, so this is a picture of. Well, I forgot my thing was in the middle of the screen. The thing was in the middle of the screen, so kind of scroll back up. Like, these were some of the images. That's Virginia. That's the cringe prince. Alright. Alright, so basically you have. This is Maxwell. I've not seen this picture before. That's Maxwell. And her father was a baron. Was Baron Robert Maxwell. All right, so this is very cliche with this Epstein situation because Maxwell's father was a baron, and she was involved in this creepy stuff with him. So it shows light about the corrupted elites. Epstein deleted himself, not really, but they're claiming that while awaiting trial in U.S. federal sex trafficking charges involved dozens of teenage girls and young women. So as young as 14, the charges came 14 years after the police in Palm Beach, Florida, first began investigating the allegations that he sexually abused underage girls who were hired to give him massages. All right, so that's her. Kinsey Schofield, host of the Toe Die Daily podcast, previously told Fox News Digital that Andrew's reputation is forever tarnished at the point that she argued that he should never be seen or heard from again, as there's nothing he can do to redeem himself publicly. Andrew needs to avoid being seen or heard for for the rest of the King Charles reign, said Schofield, if you want to attend a church with your family, fine. Stay 100 feet behind them when the photographers are around. Otherwise, he should continue horse riding privately on the property that Charles asked him to surrender. Whether he's innocent of the initial accusations is irrelevant. He's guilty by association with Epstein. And you know what? Is something else there is that with Trump was friends with him, so although Trump has not been accused of anything by anybody, but still maybe Trump feels he's in a spot because he was friends with him, but he may have not have, we don't really know what he knew or didn't know, but maybe he wasn't aware of what was going on, but so I don't know. This is all these different elites are very crooked the way they are handling the situation. Yes, so his child ban has been lifted. All right, so that is the current updates about Epstein at the moment. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to do is talk about this. One of these cave stories that I was talking about from before. Let's get the name of it. Okay, that's the name of it. This is about this cave exploration that happened. That there's conspiracy theories around. Shout out to the spaceship cats. Alright. Alright. Going right here. Alright, Ted the Caver. Here we go. Yeah, this is fine, but I want to go to the other article about it. Let's see how this goes. How well it loads up. Oh, here we go. A lot of advertisements. Okay, let's see how this goes. It goes out. Okay, it's gonna come back up. It's going to come back up. All right, it's coming back. So this is the story. It's like a creepypasta. It's about a cave exploration. It was an urban explorers that were exploring a cave, and some interesting things happened. So let's dive in. So, the Cave Journal of 12/30/2000. All right. So B, I decided to get into one more caving trip before the new year, and we set our sights on the mystery cave. Not a spectacular cave, but since neither of us had been caving in a while, it would be nice to go to any cave. There was a bit of excitement about the trip. There was a small passage in the lower portion of the cave that I wanted to check out and see what possible to get past it. It had a small opening, but it's lots of blowing out of it. Even though it was way too small to climb, though, I had never even checked to see what it was inside the passage. We got our gear loaded up and hit the road by 3 p.m., and we got into the cave in the great time since B likes to drive fast. We anchored from the usual tree and began to rappel into a cave. I went down first and got my gear together while B came down. I referred to B many times. We have been caving together for many months, and he was injured in a caving accident a few years ago and told that we would never walk again, though hard to work and the perseverance he not only walks but can go around and well in the caves. The trickier parts of the cave might slow him down a bit, but he can make it happen. Patiently works through an obstacle until he gets past it. As of the reference in the small opening of the cave, there is a small saying among cavers: if it blows, it goes, meaning if a passage has a good flow of air, it's probably worth investigating. After we explored all of the usual passages, we climbed down to check out the holes. The hole is located deep in the cave, near to the lowest part of the cave. It is on the side of a cave wall, about 3 feet from the floor. To look inside the hole, I have to kneel down to duck under an overhang of the rock. The original opening, I put my glove on the hole size for reference. And you see, it has that right there. The original opening, I put a glove in the hole for size reference, and I use my backpack mini mag light and held inside the hole to see what I could see. I was excited by what I saw. The wall around the hole was about 3 to 5 inches thick, led to a tight passage. The passage opened up a bit inside the hole. It continued back about 10 to 12 feet in the small crawl space. After that, it seemed to be really open up. Although how much we couldn't tell. This could be the Virgin Passage. Obviously, no one had passed through this route, but there could be a whole way into the passage from the other side. To even get into the crawl space, we would have to enlarge the operations. Currently, it's about the size of my fist. Once we get past the opening, we would have a tight crawl to crawl back to where it opened up. It would take some work, but thought that we could do it, and sat down for a few minutes to reset the contemplate our plan of attack. While we sat there in the darkness, we could hear the wind howling from the other side of the passage. It was low, eerie noise, and we could also hear a low rumble from time to time. No big deal though. The cave is in the vicinity of the highway that has heavy trucks drive on it. We figured the rumble was effective of the trucks resonating through the rocks. We determined that our best plan would be to haul a cordless drill into the cave to drill into the rock, and then we could take a bullpen and small sledgehammer and break up the rock. It seemed pretty straightforward. We would wind it the hole big enough to squeeze, and this was the other side. The efforts of the hull, all equipped down to the hole, would be a pain, but we hoped it would be worth it. I named the passage the Floyd's Tomb. Hello, Anna. It is great to see you. Welcome. Thank you, Anna, for telling me about the trial. Thank you. And I hope that you're having a good day. It's nice to see you. And earlier we were talking about some updates with the. So Prince Andrew is able to travel abroad out of his country. And although anywhere he goes, he will be disgraced and not liked anywhere he goes, he was able to travel now abroad. Also, there's a lot of fighting in the Congress about trying to get something passed to get the Epstein files released, but it's probably not going to work. And there's still distrust in the media. And there does seem to be some more files that weren't released, it seems. Trump said that he can have. They should be able to. Okay, Anna, understood. They should be able to end that situation, but they're probably not going to be able to release them. And then what occurs is basically they're trying to get it released, all right? So I got that taken care of. I said that. Bondi was Trump said Bondi could release more information, but she believes she's released enough. But that means there must be other things not releasing. So another thing was talking about that they're able to seize farms that Chinese companies have bought, because they might be trying to control our food supply if the Chinese control the food. So that's good that they're able to seize that away from them. Because for years now, the Chinese companies have been buying farmland and been buying farming companies. You have a company like Cook's, and they have farmers. People are trying to buy the different companies to influence them. Another thing that has happened is it seems that cloud seeding was a reason for the storm. The cloud seeding was a reason for Texas having the problem, allegedly. It seems like many are agreeing about that. That was something else that we talked about. And now we're talking about this creepypasta story of these urban explorers from 2000 that were exploring a cave. Then we could take a bullpen and a small sledgehammer and break up the rock. It seemed pretty straightforward that we would wind it whole and big enough to squeeze it, and what the other side. The effort haul all the equipment down to the hole would be a pain, but we hoped that it would be worth it. I named the passage of Floyd's Tomb and Floyd Collins. It seemed to look like a tight spot. A rough drawing of how the passage originally looked was a caver back in the early 1900s. Floyd Collins was a caver back in the early 1900s. He got stuck in a tight crawl space and was unable to free himself. His amazing story, and detailed in a book called The Trapped, The Story of Floyd Collins. I think that was a title. I don't recall the author. calling our passage. Floyd's tomb was not only a tribute to Floyd, but a commentary of the size of the passage. Haha. In retrospect, it is funny how simple I thought it was going to be. I figured out a few hours work and we would be in. Had I known how long it was going to take, I doubt I had even begun the project, and had I known I was going to experience in the cave, I never would have returned. We gathered up our gear and headed for the surface. Normally, I could care less if it ever came back into this cave. There is nothing special about it, but now I was psyched about getting through. We hadn't even left the cave and were planning our return trip. All right, January 27 to 28, 2001, the work begins. B and I were both excited to get back into the cave and got work. I figured with about 4 hours of work, we could be in and see what was on the other side. We had arranged to borrow a DeWalt cordless drill to bring with us. We also had masonry blitz. We had arranged to borrow a DeWalt cordless drill and bring with us. Also had a masonry bits, a drill with a sledgehammers to break up the rock. Bullpins insert into the drill holes, and a few other tools that we ended up not using. Getting the tools down on the work at the site proved to be a challenge. One of us would climb down the rope and stop at a ledge or a good resting place. Then other person would lower their tools. We kept repeating this route until we got into the bottom of the cave. Then we had to drag the tools to the hole. It took about an hour to finally get to work. B took the first turn at the hole. After an hour of exhausting work, we could tell that we're not going to get through in one session. We keep trading off after we worked ourselves into sweat. One would take a break and get food and water while the other ones went to work. The routine went like this. To begin the work, we would get down into our knees and go into avoid the smack in our heads in the ceiling. They would work awkward positions and would drill into the wall around the hole. That was difficult to work. We really had to push the drill and was still in progress, then insert the bullpen and hole and hammered the rock and broke, and then we would repeat the process to give an idea of how slow it went. The typical size rock that would be break off was about a fingernail size. So basically give a context about the story. Ted the Caver and his friend were going into this cave, and they were seeing these strange symbols in the cave that they didn't know what kind of the ancient people from a long time ago must have worshipped something in there. There could have been a long time ago. So they allegedly heard a very loud scream, in the cave. So it's an urban exploration, but in a cave instead. Rather than an abandoned place, it's an abandoned cave. They go in there, and they see behind a wall, behind this stone, there's an opening, and there's more stuff within there. And that is when they allegedly see something move that freaks them out and they get out of the cave, but they want to go back and explore it and have somebody else that knows what they're doing about to judge like what the symbol means. And the guy usually has his dog with him when he was in this cave. He goes in there. Other dude goes in there. What occurs is that the guy goes in there for a little while. Then he comes out, and he's kind of has a bloody arm, and he says he doesn't feel well, and he doesn't talk to Ted the caver again. So it kind of adds some mystery to it. Yeah. So. And they do not really find out or know what was in there, but they saw something very strange that freaked them out. Now, it is usually considered something... He was on a podcast, Ted the Caver, a little while back, and he was saying the whole story was made up, that they were making just a scary movie, and it was fictional. But there is some speculation that it could have been something real, or it could have been based off something real, but it's something that was made up for a film, just for fun. Yeah, but they go and they explore this cave, and there seems to be these strange humans or something in there. Like, I was thinking it was like a dragon or something, because I thought when I was seeing the films of it, I thought I saw a dragon, or some sort of reptile eye in there at some point. And dragons usually live in caves in mythology. Now, people don't have to believe in dragons, but yeah, they allegedly live in caves. And you have beasts and things that were known to live in caves throughout centuries. So I wouldn't be surprised if you came across a cave and there was something in there that they didn't think would be in there and they ran out. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was real, but allegedly this is just something made up for... It was made up for fun, early 2000s. What I'm reading is kind of like a very long, detailed version of that story. And from time of the variety... we would just wail on the cold chisel with a 5-pound sledge. It was slow progress. The problem with the sledge was that we couldn't take a good swing because of the tight quarters. You know, and a lot of times it's very tight and it's difficult to maneuver through these things. Even though we spent many hours and several trips working on the hole, we never find the better technique for the winding hole. The drill bullpen hammer got in the best for our efforts. We came up with the same story, so some ideas for the breaking up the rock, everything from TNT, never seriously considered it, to hauling a generator to the mouth of the cave and running an extension cord down to a jackhammer. We even thought about using a liquid nitrogen to freeze the rock and make it more brilliant. After a couple hours of hard work, we realized what our limiting factor was going to be. It was about then that our first battery met the abrupt deletion. We had a second battery, so we swapped them out, and the second battery lasted a little longer because we hammered and chiseled a little more than often and a little longer each time. Finally, after about 3 or more hours of drudgery, the second battery was deleted. We called it a night, woo, and could tell that we had done some work in the cave. But it was not much. For the first time since we got in the cave, we sat back. Both of us took a break and nice to check out the results of our hard work. Then we noticed the hollowing again. So they noticed the hollowing noise. It seemed to be a bit louder this time, and we were there. We just figured the wind was blowing a little stronger outside, and what we could not figure out was the rumbling. It too seemed a bit louder and more frequent the time that we could not attribute the noise to the trucks. The road that the trucks drove on was not very busy to begin with. At the time of night, it should be dead, deleted. Yet a rumbling continued. It seemed to be coming from deep within the passage. B. Said that we would have some veteran cavers what be causing this noise. So they're in this cave and they're trying to dig around to try to go through the cave and explore it. And I keep on hearing this loud hollowing, this from deep within the cave somewhere. They're very brave to stay in the cave and keep on working. So they're working for quite a while. Because I know the summary of the story, but from this, it was over a couple of hours. It was from quite a while, and then they hear the howling. We didn't spend a long time admitting our work. We still had to haul the gear up and out the cave. Actually, we left some of the cave. It was still difficult work. What made it worse was that we were both exhausted. Our original plan was to be done with the cave and hit a couple of other caves in the area. In the day, instead, we decided to crash our nearby motel and charge up the drill batteries and go back to the mystery cave. On the side, you can see the opening of the cave that they made. Photo of the opening of the cave on their first trip. My journal goes on length about the night after we left the cave. We got into a room. Dinner was excellent, and I didn't sleep good despite the fact that I was exhausted. We both slept so that we got late, start back in the cave. The second day working on the cave, we went about the same the first. We worked into both batteries were deleted again, and we were still not even close to getting through. The howling and rumbling continued like the day before. On caving. Before I continue with this next journey entry, I thought it might be helpful to the reader to explain a little bit about the caving and about the atmosphere of the cave. As I reread and think about my description of the cave, I notice that much of the language I am in my caving journal and descriptions are lack, therefore assume that the reader has knowledge of caving and what it's like to be inside a cave. In other words, I write my journals for me. I will take this time to more detailed description of the cave, and I will tell about what it was like while we worked on the cave, and I will summarize our feelings at this point. This cave was discovered several decades ago when the construction of the area unearthed its entrance. From that time to the present, and it has been visited by mostly locals in the areas and avid cavers in the region. Beer cans can be found intermittently in the cave, mostly on the upper half. When the cave was first entered, it was probably beautiful. Dust, graffiti, vandals, and pigeons and regulars has diminished its appeal. There are still places in the cave where small formations remain undisturbed as a reminder of what the rest of the cave used to look like. To enter the cave, one must have a good length of rope in order to rappel down into the rock. A nearby tree serves as a good anchor point. Once the rope is tied to the tree about 20 feet away from the small cliff, it can be tossed over the edge of the cliff and small ledge 15 feet below. The cavers can then descend the short distance of the entrance. Once inside the cave, artificial light must be used. My light source of choice is a battery-operated Hamlet-mounted light known as a TAG light. Safe caving calls for at least 2 sources of backup lights. For my backup light, I have a mini mag light mounted in my helmet, and another helmet mounted light in the pack, which I always carry with me. I always have a glow stick that I carry with me. These are not considered good sources of back backup light, and some by some, and they are good to use for taking lunch breaks, and they could be used to get out of a cave, and the other sources fall. Other sources fate. Other sources fail, rather, not fate. After a short climb over the large rocks, the caver comes to a large pit. The same rope is used to reach the bottom of the pit. The drop is 50 feet or so, but it is not a free hanging. In other words, you can slide straight down the rope, which is preferable. You have to snake your way around the sharp rocks as you descend. The ascent is made more difficult for some reason. The pit varies. The diameter about 10 feet to 3 or 4 places. The walls are now covered with dust and dirt and was kicked down from above by years of caving. The popcorn makes it painful to brush again in the side of the pit. My choice of clothing is the Levi's t-shirt, gloves, and knee pads. I usually leave the cave with the few scrapes, but at least I am comfortable with while I climb around the inside. The temperature is stable year-round. It feels cool in the summer and warm in the winter. We have gone into the freezing days, and 10 feet into the cave, it is warm enough that coats are not needed. It is a good temperature to work, and as we learned. Yeah, because under the house I have is like a cave, and it's very cool under there. For this size drop, I usually figure B descend device. For the climb up, I attach myself to the rope using a Petzl ascender, but climb up on my own without using the device. It is merely as a safety attachment in case I slip. Other cavers have their own methods of getting down and up. The bottom of the drop, caver gets to do some crawling for a while. There is a small room about 6 by 6 feet, and the bottom gives the caver a spot to leave this harness and descend ascending gear. Since there is no more steep drops, the harness is not needed and will only get in the way. Once the caver gets down 6 by 6 room, he can take a break under a lodge while the rest of the party comes down. Then he must drop his knees to negotiate a 10-foot long passage that is only a few feel high. This is where the knee pads come in handy. The floor is covered with a soft dirt intermingled with bits of broken rock from above. The thin layer of dirt does nothing to soften the blow to the hands and knees. The caver works down the crawl space as reward in the end of the crawl. He gets to a drop to his belly and scoot under a tight squeeze. Not really tight, just something low enough to make the caver scoot along in the dirt. Once the caver gets into the side of the squeeze, there are a few feet of crawl space, then the cave opens up enough to stand for most of the rest of the cave, and the caver can stand or at least stop, sloop. The cave splits off into several passages at this point. The route of the wind around the rocks in the caves come abrupt to the ends. They lead to 100 feet or so in the gradual downward slope. Most of them of the caver can walk upright in the passages. Other times he will have a climb over the boundaries of occasionally crawl hands and knees. Water is common occurrence in caves. I have been told that one of the local residents was one of the first people in the cave, and that his cousin dove into the pools using the scuba gear. I didn't even know there's a pool in there. He said that the cave continued down a couple hundred feet underwater. What we're hoping for is that what happens frequently is that the passage comes somewhere else with the Virgin Cave passage to explore. A lot of these caves have not been explored for thousands of years, so it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't possess the knowledge to give more details about the types of rocks in the cave. When we were drilling, we would have some parts that were easier to drill than others, and there were different colors in the rocks, but that is the best I can describe the makeup of the cave. At this point, the cave splits into routes, and the passages that the dead ends immediate left the cave straight ahead, and the right passage that leads to the opening rises nearly 10 feet in the air and ending a mere foot below the cave ceiling, and this continues the same height as 40 feet, and the passage travels in continuous direction. The section of the cave resembles a hard rock line. Its arc nearly perfect, at the floor flat and easy to walk on. It's easy to picture a rusty mine and cars at the rail lines, and dust-covered miners with blisters in the hand and gripping dull picks. The pseudo-mine comes at the end, and the caves is once again forced to drop into the hand and knees and get a recreated with the floor of the cave. The time of the crawl lasts about 20 feet. The floor is sloping greatly downward in the first haul of the crawl. Then he gets fairly steep and slippery. Able-bodied cavers can still climb carefully down the slopy slope. When I go with B, I carry the end of the rope, and that used to go down at this point. I usually need to tie another length of the first rope, to make sure that it can be used to reach the bottom. The crawl lasts for at least a few feet beyond the bottom of the sides, over 12 to 10 feet. Begins regaining positions. Alright. That is a flat photo of the cave. It's quite fascinating, to me, at least. Okay, and also we got that. Okay, so that is, we'll read more of it, but that is some information about this cave creepypasta that I came across that I thought was interesting. Alright, so let's look at this again. Right here. Okay, so Surprise Farms, Epstein, okay. Alright. From the time it happened to the writing of the journal, the entry the 2 days later, have tried to come up with... Okay, we've read that before. Oh, yeah, okay, I know where I am. The lower left-hand corner of the whole had been giving us grief because of the thickness of the wall, and pointed and felt that it had we just removed the corner and we might be on our way inside. B had his own hand crumbled remains of the corner. Our excitement consumed us as we examined the hole. I took the hammer and pounded away at the surface of the hole. The idea that was to remove the jagged edges that would take their toll off my skin. In order to go straight into the hole, I stood on my feet and bent over to get into the level of the entrance. My knees were bent in a position uncontrollable, the sort of semi-squatting positions bent in the waist with arms overhead. Plus, I had significantly turned my upper torso to the left in the counterclockwise routine negotiations routine to negotiate the angle of the entrance. Notice that the photos of the entrance are generally slopes to the right. I got my arms tough through the entrance with minor scrapes. Next came my head. By keeping it turned sideways, I was able to get it in. Most part of the shoulders, when I got in the shoulders, I could feel the rocks touching all around my shoulders and chest. It was not stopping me, but I was definitely scraping many surfaces of my head, and I decided to just push through and keep in mind that I was going to have come back to eventually. The pain was not bad, and I was in, well, my upper body was at least, and got into the tomb was going to be like. Once inside the tomb, I had inches around me in which positions my body. This was the largest part of the passage. Conveniently located right in the beginning of the crawl, gave me and got room to position the crawl further into the passage inside the tomb, and gave me a whole new outlook of the small crawl, and still small. I could move my head around freely, but eventually, during the direction I turned, I was staring at the wall in a solid of rock. When I spoke to B, my voice sounded muffled, like I was talking in a small box. I couldn't rest my chest on the passage floor, but the rocks were uncomfortable. I turned my head and looked further ahead, but I couldn't see the past wall and the rocks I had built the day before. The squeeze toward the end of the passage was closer now and appeared even newer. I didn't know if I could squeeze through or not. I knew it would be close. The loose rocks were lying on the passage floor out of my way, and I was disappointed and find out that the rocks overlooked was loose, and was hoping to be able to just scrape them to the point I used the rock wall, made further back passage. In the solid ones, by sliding ahead the hammer onto the squeeze, I determined that the narrow west part of the squeeze was about 7 inches high of the head, and B was kicking back and listened to descriptions and progress reports at the same point snapped in the photo above. Thanks to B up the point, size of the passage was not too big of a deal. I was incredibly small passage, but only my upper body was, since the largest part of the passage and the arms could move freely. I was pretty calm. Then it was time for the push. So it's interesting to see how these people that were exploring this mysterious cave, these urban explorers, how they're exploring the cave, and how in detail the small spaces, the way they have to dig through things, the strange noises they're hearing throughout the cave, and in detail how they get through the cave, the hammers they use, the ropes they use. As we talk about the abandoned places, and this is even more tedious in a way, and it's considered like a tomb. it's quite, and they're hearing these mysterious noises. So I think that is quite interesting. And as I said, we are still researching this. So we'll do a couple of streams probably about this particular one. But yeah, that is fascinating that they do that. And I think it's very brave and also mysterious about what could be those noises in the cave. All right. All right. So basically, we talked about everything we need to talk about for this stream, and we talked about some of the news, the updates, and about this some urban explorer stuff with the cave. And those that are seeing the replay, I appreciate you all for seeing the replay, and those that were here with me throughout the stream, I appreciate you all very much for staying with me. And the commentary back and forth that we had a good stream. We also talked about the weather, and I hope all of you have a very good evening. Thank you all for coming and watching, and peace. All right, the emoji didn't work, so I'll do this again. All right.